Welcome, everybody. It is Business on the Block coming to you live. It is October 25th, 2023. It is now 4:01 East Coast United States. This is Business on the Block, your weekly insight into the digital media revolution. You're here for episode 51, NFTs, AIs, and X's. This week, we update you on NFTs and how they continue to develop. Crypto winter be damned. We'll also share exactly how AI is growing, and it's specifically dominant in the media and technology field. And finally, it wouldn't be a week if we didn't have a fresh news on how Elon is impacting the social media business model. It's not the news, it's what the news means. Business on the Block. I'm joined this week, as always, by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hi, everyone.
And Mike Neubauer, your ops guy.
Happiest of Wednesdays.
Come on, folks. Energy here. All right. We're going to do three stories. These aren't really stories. These are really meant to provide insight. The purpose of this show is to show you new ways that you can use blockchain in your marketing and advertising, if you will, to help build your business. And so there was I can't even call it a story. It's a report from the World Economic Forum, of all places. NFTs, it's the evolution of non-fungible tokens report. And this is discussing how NFTs continue to evolve, even though they've fallen out of favor right now. As everyone knows, NFTs have declined in popularity since 2022, and yet the report underlines three industries that are still exploring how to market with this thing. This technology of blockchain is being used now specifically in financial services, so that's like the crypto assets, fashion, Nike, Adidas. Did I get that right, Michelle?
It's fine.
And gaming. But we believe the highest untapped potential, this is the Business on the Block podcast, it could be consumer packaged goods. And for those longtime listeners, Mike, you've talked way in the past about neighborhood alliances between businesses. I think that they're starting to realize that on a bigger scale. So for thoughts around this and how NFTs continue to evolve, despite the fact that they're out of favor right now, I'm going to start us off. Mike, if you could just comment a bit on what you thought about the World Economic Forum's piece.
Well, we all know my sentiment on the World Economic Forum. But that aside, look, I don't think it really went anywhere. Just because you have transactional volume that's not in place does not mean that things are not happening and pieces are not being built. Our focus from day one on this 51 episodes now has really been on the business application, not necessarily, not necessarily an artistic or just sort of like a hype and FOMO type, application of what NFT provides. And I think that's what caught a lot of the headlines, higher transactions for those types of things, hit or miss, you would get rugged. But from a business perspective, this is a digital asset and a marketing campaign that can be easily built and, thrive over a period of time. And just like any other marketing campaign, the whole purpose is to create a new, unique way to engage with the community, create the community, and, just increase your brand awareness in an effort to funnel those users down a conversion funnel as a point of purchase or sale or, some sort of a lead generation tool. And I think that, these aspects are very much still alive, and I don't think they've really gone anywhere. Did they make headlines? No, because, they're not as sexy as a $125,000 PNG image. But the bottom line is that we've said it a long time now, the technology is here to stay. Right? It's not going anywhere. The different use case applications are going to continuously evolve. We are in the process of building out these interactive pieces that separate, the traditional PNG construct to more of a community engaging tool, which theoretically is marketing. So everything you rattled off there at the beginning, the fashion and all, all of these things really did not, you neglected to mention the marketing aspect of it, where I really feel that is the primary use case of where this ends up, especially on the business front.
So Mike, give us an example of what would be a marketing use case using blockchain.
So when we all met in Phoenix, Arizona at the CEX event, I was walking around that event, brand new to NFTs, brand new to Web3, as really everybody was, blockchain technology, and just challenging people like, okay, give me an example of a client that you work with, and I'll show you a use case of what an NFT can provide to that. And I've gotten random examples, everything from a plumber to, a local gym. And, if you sit there and you break it down to the simplest level, Something like a gym. Well, an NFT can act as a membership. You have X amount of memberships that you're able to allocate. These memberships act as an ownership piece that a member of a gym can use to go to the gym. But it also acts as some sort of a marketing and a collaboration piece where that local gym can collaborate with the nutrition shop down the street, where if you have a membership of the gym, you get X amount of a discount at the nutrition shop. Now you're sharing that traffic. Now that nutrition shop could also have an NFT, or they could piggyback off of the same NFT. And now you're in a process of creating this community with like-minded interests and, really sharing that traffic back and forth for people who would find benefit from both applications of the business. Now, something as simple as a plumber, what would a plumber do with an NFT? Well, it's quite simple. If you own a plumbing business in a local community, chances are you're targeting that local community. You're not driving to Nebraska to go fix a toilet, unless you're in Nebraska. And the NFT benefit can also act as sort of a loyalty and reward program, where if you hold it, maybe you get a free annual inspection, or you get a free tune-up on whatever it is that a plumber would tune up. There's a million different applications when it comes to that. Maybe one free service call a year. There's a lot of marketing campaigns that go behind the application of getting the NFT into the consumer's hands. And I think, businesses are starting to realize that potential.
Michelle, what are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, I mean, we have talked about it a lot over the time. I think the age of a JPEG in and of itself selling for $1 million is over. And the hype around that, and the FOMO that wealthy individuals had at the height of the crypto NFT boom, and so jumped in and paid ridiculous prices for things. And, those people that paid $1.4 million for their Bored Ape Yacht Club thing is now worth, $30,000 or something. So, there's those sorts of things that happened a year and a half, 2 years ago that, you have the everyday person on the sidelines go, oh, people paid lots of money for those monkey pictures, et cetera, and they're not good for anything. And in and of itself, that's probably true. But what we've seen over the past 12 months, and as Mike has talked to, but the Starbucks Odyssey program, the Nike X program with their shoes, the Air Jordans, and the NFTs that go with that. We've seen collaborations with Tiffany's, we've seen Gucci and Hermes handbags, and we've seen a lot of brands dip their toes into the water, and it's going to be those sorts of companies in the initial stages that are going to have people sort of sit up and listen and take note of what it is that the blockchain can provide in terms of rewards and loyalty programs or benefits that the person that holds that particular NFT receives. And, at the end of the day, it's only going to get bigger. There's only going to be more of them. And once larger, not even necessarily mass adoption, but once people start to get more comfortable with the space, and once there is an ease in which you can have things turn up in a wallet, like we've talked about being on your iPhone or your Android phone where the wallet's already built in, once those sorts of things happen, people will be receiving what we now call NFTs, which might not be called NFTs then. They'll have them in their wallets. They won't even know they're NFTs, but the record of all that stuff will be on the blockchain. And as Mike said before, the technology's here, it's not going away. And, I think that our imaginations is the limit currently of what we can do with this technology going forward.
You made an interesting point, Michelle. I want to comment on it. There's the context of where we are versus where we're going. Where we are right now is exactly what you said, as you wisely pointed out, loyalty programs, and actually I'll add gaming experiences, right? The skins and weapons in game, etc. That's where we are today. We're seeing Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks and Bud Light and all these loyalty programs. But where we're going is seeding audience. To Mike's point, I think that the audience that you can build, there's two aspects to this. There's the example Mike used of a similar related audience where, Mike, in the past, you've talked about the local gym runs a deal with the local deli, and you guys can swap audience, if you will, the discounts for the gym guy at the deli, vice versa. But I also think from the example of Taylor Swift and the National Football League in America, you can cross-pollinate a completely different audience in a different area with NFTs. So you can create incentives, if you will, or interesting collaborations between two groups of people that would traditionally never have crossed paths. And in the case of Taylor and the NFL, that's because there's some dating going on, right? But you can do that from a business sense with NFTs, where you decide we never speak to this audience. If you are an auto mechanic and fine dining, or I guess you could, Michelin kind of touched on that one, but you can take these two disparate groups and find ways to marry that through NFTs. That hasn't happened yet.
Well, it's a gateway, right? It's a gateway to attract or engage with any community. How many Taylor Swift targeted ads are now sold through NFL platforms just because, she's caught a lot of the headlines with respect to anything NFL related? It's no different. Again, the complexities of what blockchain is and how it's perceived, it doesn't need to go that route, especially when a business is trying to create this engagement tool with their consumer, right? I mean, I think that creates a lot more confusion that really may or may not turn people off to it. Based around all of these bad stories, black eyes and scars that, have happened over the last few years with, money being laundered and, all of these various components. Now, one of the important pieces of this is regulation. And again, as long as this tool, and I'm going to stress the term tool, as long as this tool is an application that's designed to do other things and not guarantee any sort of return on an investment, then you're playing within the marketing guidelines that allows a business to build a campaign structure properly. The minute you start building up this hype and FOMO and sweep the floor and, we're going to make it and we're going to the moon, now you're starting to have these false promises of investment challenges where here in the US, they've started to actually go after some of these projects, some of these bigger successful projects. So again, we just came back from Richmond, Virginia. And this is an NFT focused or NFT started operation that has been taking place over the last 2 years. And what it has done is it has segued and transitioned not necessarily out of blockchain and out of NFT, but it expanded to more of a physical dimension, right? We just launched a trading card game. Now that trading card game could have implications and benefits by having NFT associations such as memberships into a league, different advantages of having specific NFTs with respect to playing the game itself. But again, it shows that the digital side of things could easily become that gateway and that portal that bridges a business and a strategy out to other tangents that provide any sort of brand recognition or even revenue.
To your point on regulation, the World Economic Forum discusses the future of NFTs. These are their words, not mine. Depends on three aspects: regulation, interoperability, and the ease of use, which, Michelle, you've discussed that time immemorial about the wallets have to get easier. But I agree with you, Mike. I think that we're looking at a situation, though, where when the World Economic Forum recognizes the ability to cross-pollinate industries and how you can impact industry A with industry B, I think that you're starting to think big companies will start to recognize, like the NFL, we can tap a whole new audience, and this is a marketing tool. It's just using technology. All right.
Yeah. And I think too that, some of the points that they raise that we have talked about before. So, things like it's easy at the moment and it would be going forward to tie them to physical items. So, they call that phygital. And so, things like you've got you buy a pair of sneakers and you get a digital twin with that. There's ticketing, obviously, like you can go to concerts and things like that and get tickets that are NFTs, so they become collectibles like baseball cards. One of the things that I think that is untapped right now, and I know that Mike gets really excited about this, certificates of ownership and authenticity, that is placed on the blockchain, which you are going to be able to, use going forward to identify either you or, with the advent of AI, and we're going to talk about this later, but that you will be able to in the future tie, even if it's speaking sessions or physical, like ads on TV or posts on social media and things, you will be able to say that it's you. It's kind of like, at the end of those, during the election campaigns where the candidate comes on at the end and says, I endorse this ad. It's that kind of thing. But people would be able to authenticate that and know that it's you. And that's something that's, I think that is going to become really important. And particularly, if you buy things like, if you buy a $300,000 or $400,000 or $1 million watch and stuff like that, it can be authenticated on the blockchain and people can see that, yes, you really do own the watch. Those sorts of things, I think, are, the sky's the limit for that stuff.
I think we need to worry about the marketing angles of AI being used in the presidential campaign in America coming up. I think to your point about this, I've endorsed this, I'm on candidate X and I endorse this. You're going to be getting direct emails in your inbox from that candidate.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole different discussion. But 5-6 years ago, people thought I was nuts when I thought QR codes were going to be a useful marketing tool. Nobody would ever interact with that, right? And all it took, because back then you used to need an app. Right? You needed an application to be downloaded on your phone in order to engage with the QR code. So what happened? Well, the camera now interacts with it directly. There's zero effort that the user has to do. In fact, it literally became an app that will make you waffles. And basically all you got to do is hold up your phone right now and you can interact with it. But on the back end, what people don't realize is, all of that data is still stored somewhere. All of that data is now available to the owner of that QR code, the company that issues that QR code, that gets it live. So tomorrow night is Thursday Night Football, speaking of the NFL, on Amazon Prime. I challenge anybody, just sit there and watch a quarter, watch a segment of the game. Anytime there's a commercial, the new ads and the new commercials that pop up on Amazon literally have a QR code in the lower left-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner. And when you scan that, not only are you interacting directly with the ad, which indirectly, targets a specific audience, but because it's on Amazon, if it's a consumer-based product, a consumer packaged good or something that is available on Amazon, it will bring that user directly to a point of purchase.
To the barcode.
2 points. Oh, God, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, so the point is that 5-6 years ago, this was a marketing strategy that was laughed at. Right. Yes. I was in the trenches when it was getting laughed at. So I understand where businesses stood on that component. Now, take whatever impact COVID had on what QR codes are now, right? You can't touch a menu anymore because you'll get cooties. So you have to scan this and put it on your device that you pee with all day long. So the impact that had might have expedited the ability, but I really feel it's become an essential piece of technology that people just don't even think about anymore. And I feel blockchain and whatever blockchain campaigns and endeavors are going to be introduced, especially when there's money behind it, it's also going to become a thing of the, just a thought that people don't even realize anymore.
There are two things. For those not familiar with the professional speaker circuit, a lot of times speakers will put just on the slide behind them a QR code. And it's the speakers down. And we were there in the Creator Economy Expo out, I think it was Arizona, when people were giving out NFTs just for that event, just for that speaker, just for that moment in time.
Yeah.
They call them POAPs. Yeah.
I don't mean the POAPs.
As well.
I mean,
they had their own. Yeah.
You were
it's the same thing though. A POAP is an NFT.
That was so far ahead of the, that's what's going to come. That is a snapshot of the future. The second thing is, my 17-year-old recently cut out a piece of paper and tapes it to the wall of the basement, and it is a QR code. And I go, what is that? And he's like, so what do I do? Hold the phone up. Rick Astley, never going to give you up. So the point is, people are doing this stuff. And he's 17. So this is for the companies to be able to leverage this and save all the friction of going to websites. You're so right, Mike. They're going to do it through NFTs. It's even easier than QR codes.
And from a user perspective, you're not just somebody who scans a QR code, right? You're not just somebody who watches an ad. You actually have something digital / tangible
Yep.
that you can take away from that experience. And I think that's something that NFTs provide. And look, if the Bored Apes and all these other crap has showed us something, NFTs are just nothing more than your traditional status symbol, right? Where do you sit with whatever you have displayed in your current wallet? You basically show a lineage of all the different interactions that you had over the course of, whatever timeline that is.
All right, I'm going to move.
No, you're not going to move because I've got one more thing to say. If we wonder about how low and at what point in the dip we are, I would say that we are at rock bottom. If we're not almost at rock bottom, we're definitely there. Just two things that I wanted to say, just to kind of give a bit of a point as to how much heat is out of this part of the space right now. So Adidas for our American friends, in December 2021 and through to that early part of 2022, their monthly high of volume on their NFTs was around $57 million. And right now it's $1,000 a month.
Oof.
So 57 million down to 1,000. Now that is pretty staggering. But it's not just, people go, oh, Bored Ape and, whatever, all these ones that were just JPEGs and they didn't do anything. Their volume's down 97% or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. But, like Adidas and the next one I'll tell you about is Dolce & Gabbana. So they're actual brands. They actually are tied to a physical item. They actually do something within that ecosystem. Dolce & Gabbana, April 22, 14.8 million for their NFT collection, 1,000 again now. So, it's a sad thing in regards to that, because those sorts of NFTs actually do have some value of what you can do with them. They're not just a pretty picture or whatever, like it would be for a.
Can I opine? The Wall Street, the 30 years of stock market trading is crying out right now. Good. I'm glad these things are going off the cliff, because the functional value of them has nothing to do with the trading volume. That measuring stick of trading volume, the measuring stick is broken. It's the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I agree. And my follow-up comment to that particular point, and this is why I disagreed backstage before we jumped on this call with this. The measuring stick is not accurate, right? It's just a matter of how many people actually want to flip it for a buck or two. But if you're actually holding on to things, now you're creating a community, right? Now you're actually showcasing the value proposition that goes with holding it instead of reselling it.
You're only creating a community if the people holding on to it aren't holding on to it to flip a profit.
Correct. And the lack of volume thereafter shows that they're holding on to it.
Well, they're hosed.
Or they are taking advantage of the benefit. The right people, ultimately, the right targeted audience could have easily gotten. I'm not saying these two examples specifically, but in any event, when trading volume goes down, over time, you're going to figure that the people who are supposed to be within the community figure out ways to get their hands on the asset. And if they take advantage of that, why would they get rid of it? And if they hold on to it, the volume naturally goes down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the other component of this, from the regulation side of things, some of these projects, some of these businesses are in hot water specifically for the reason why secondary market sales exist. It was promoted on the front end that you can sell these things, you could do great, and then you can make all this percentage in perpetuity. Well, you have the ability to kind of control the flow of how the market operates with different promises and with different campaigns after that, all while you're profiting, right? So that became problematic on the regulatory side. Like, hey, let's sweep the floor. The top 10 people to sweep the floor get this. And, we're going to do this, contest for the people who hold this. And like, all of these are benefits that looked good on the front end, but when, the company's profiting on the back end with those secondary sales, they're creating that hot air and that hype in that balloon again. And that's where it becomes problematic. So that's where they try to keep their sales volume up. But I was always against that metric of secondary volume being the validity structure of whether a project is successful or not.
I agree with you 100%, which disturbs me greatly.
The thing with that though is that it tells us, doesn't it, about what level of people who came in then. So it was at the hype, it was at the high, it was everyone trying to ride on the wave. I can make some money at that time. And we know, because we were all in that space at that time and looking at different things. People bought anything. It actually didn't matter what it was. You know what I mean? Like it was just insane.
Yeah.
But it was just, oh, it's an NFT, I'll grab one. They didn't know what they were getting. They didn't know what it looked like. They didn't care, because as Mike said, they were in it for the flip or whatever. But at the end of the day, these sorts of companies have NFTs that in and of themselves actually can do something for them as part of their audience or building their community. And that's really what we have been talking about probably for 49 and a half of the 51 episodes we've done.
Yeah. We need to get rid of these clowns to make legitimate buildings for these things.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to move us into the AI update portion of the program. AI continues to accelerate. There are two articles that caught the eye of this program this week. One, OpenAI's annual revenue crosses $1 billion. That is billion. Recent remarks from CEO Sam Altman reveal OpenAI is generating, sit down for this one, $100 million per month.
It's crazy.
The lion's share comes from subscription to ChatGPT, which they only started doing in February. And for context for the listeners, OpenAI made $28 million for all of last year. They're making $100 million per month right now. I pair that story with Microsoft. The chairman and CEO, Satya Nadella, put an annual shareholder letter out. He says that they have a new shared vision of the new era dominated by AI. This is Microsoft. They plan to intertwine AI across all their customer products. This is what we're seeing with their Copilot effort. And they quote, next generation of AI comes from two pivotal advancements. This is according to the CEO, natural language processing and generative AI. NLP is basically the machines understand words, and generative AI means they can make stuff from the words. So together, this is going to transform how humans interact with data, and they believe this will unlock colossal opportunity. I don't think anyone here would argue with this. I'm going to make the point that easy tools like this, like OpenAI, like Copilot, Microsoft, etc., easy tools drive the digital media revolution that we are documenting as it unfurls. For comments on this, we'll start off with you, Michelle. This is closer to your world of content marketing.
Well, I think that, okay, so I actually had a question, which you can, I'm sure that Mike would be able to answer too. But so when we say they're making money, that's people investing in them, right? They're not actually making money, or are they making?
No, they're making. So they charge $20 a month for.
From the ChatGPT thing, yeah, okay. Because I know that we've talked about before about the insane amounts of investment they've had as well over the past, just the last 3 or 4 months or something. It's like, what is it, 100 million a month they've been, or something ridiculous that they've been getting in cash flow. So when I was thinking about that first, I thought, are they actually making it, or is it right? Okay, so
this company is so in bed with Microsoft though right now. So when they make all this money, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think these two stories are related more than just the fact that it's about AI.
Yes. Yeah. So in terms of the OpenAI one, we know, don't we, and we have talked about it before, that there are companies that are laying off whole content teams, whole marketing teams. They think that they can use ChatGPT to write all their articles, all their sales messages and everything like that. And obviously when you can pay $20 a month for a subscription and employ a junior, someone you pay $20K a year to, and they sit down and just type prompts in and produce articles and put stuff up, that's the state of what we're seeing currently. But what we've also talked about, haven't we, is that it's not so much the grunt work of actually writing articles or, writing product design descriptions for your services or your products. It's about the thinking behind that, and it's about the nuances that we know that ChatGPT can't do now. And that's where I think a lot of these companies, a lot of these businesses who just think that ChatGPT is going to be the savior of them being able to, have their marketing costs down to next to zero, longer term, all the things on the internet and everything on the web will look the same because they're all written by the same thing, and they're not specific for them. They're not, well, you know, like, I mean, there are people who do use it to train it to speak like them and all of that, but that's probably, you know, less than 5%, maybe 1% of the people that do that.
I got
and so,
sorry, Michelle. I want to share a story. This how, as a content marketer in the fintech space, how ChatGPT makes my life miserable. It touches on what you just said, and it's not why you think. In the old days, a company would come to me and say, "We need help writing this piece. This is what we want it to be about," and I would write it for them. Now they have some 22-year-old kid who's hacked up some piece of crap through ChatGPT. It's terrible.
And they want you to fix it.
And then they'll come to me and be like, "Yeah," they think they're going to save money, and be like, and my point was like, well, you know, what was the purpose of the article? What is the functional? What are we trying to do with this? We just want to talk about blah, blah, blah. In the end, these companies hurt themselves with ChatGPT, not help. And I'm not selling against it. Like, it sounds like sour grapes, but I'm telling you, it is harder to fix a broken piece of content than to write it from scratch.
But it's the same as what Mike has been, you know, has banged on about for so many episodes. It's a tool. You know, like, it is something that you can use. Like, I use it in the work that I do, but what do I use it for? I use it for, you know, research. I use it for, you know, tell me 5 websites that are the top 10 hits for, you know, 10 websites, top 10 hits for, you know, blah, 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 a subject. And then I go to them and I have a look for the information I want, for example. You know, it's that kind of thing that I use it for. I don't say, write me 25 LinkedIn posts and post them for me, and then I can go and sit on the beach in the Bahamas. Like, that's not what's going on.
But Michelle, all those content teams that you mentioned that get laid off, and that's unfortunately true, that is the digital media revolution. Those folks turn right around with their skill set, take tools like Copilot and OpenAI, ChatGPT, and they suddenly make it a real hard life for places like the New York Times or, you know, the Daily Mail. It's these companies that have the in-house talent that they then turn loose. That's the whole journalism story. How many newsletter writers do we know in our organizations that are former journalists?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. So I feel like the media revolution is being empowered by these tools clearly, and this is going to accelerate and not get. It's going to be worse before it gets better, if you will, but it's better at the individual level right off the bat. Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
The evolution of this is still continuing, right? So I totally agree that it should and definitely is a tool at this stage. Could it ultimately replace somebody? Yeah, I mean, just like anything else could. An assembly line replaced several people who used to drag a car down, you know, the production line. But to summarize, I guess, where things are at right now, no matter what industry you're in and what use case you have for something like ChatGPT, it's a brainstorm buddy. Right? Like, it's just something to bounce some ideas off of, maybe get a framework to expand upon, but it lacks, obviously, the human element behind it all. But one of the things that I mentioned way back when, you know, we actually had an episode whether Google was a threat because of what ChatGPT was going to bring to the table. Are we going to train our own minds to accept the output that something like GPT provides, rather than provide the input that we're looking for that assistance on? Meaning, like, are we going to sit here and condition our thought process and accept something that may not necessarily be what we should be promoting just simply because AI, or this quote unquote AI, had generated it? The other thing that I'll just continuously repeat here, I feel that there's still a tremendous amount of fingerprints on all of these AI tools, right? It's no different from any sort of algorithm, right? The AI is just another term for algorithm. If you want to compare it to this show, they replaced Web3, you know, which was, you know, the algorithm, with AI, which is what we now call blockchain. So until the fingerprints are somewhat lifted and we actually truly have this machine learned software that does not have the valuable input and output based around whatever somebody deems appropriate or not, it will not truly be artificial intelligence. It'll just be another mechanism where we can receive information on what people feel is acceptable for us to know and to access.
So, Mike, I'm going to say that the AI evolution does not revert in any way, shape, or form or negate the Pareto principle, which people will know as the 80-20 rule. 20% of the people will use these tools and win, 80% won't. You have to figure it's going to pander for the lowest common denominator, and whether I'm going to be lazy and just use ChatGPT to write articles, or if I'm going to actually give some thought to what I want to create, or maybe assess what's been created. It's the same process. 20% of the people will be critical in their judgment, and most won't. So I'm not here to change human nature. I'm just going to make the argument that for the 20% who do master these tools and learn to build a business around them and institute blockchain as a marketing angle, this is the future of business, no matter what industry you're in.
And can I say that the business is not buy my course on how to use ChatGPT to whatever. That is not what we're talking about when we're talking about the crypto bros who are the AI bros now.
I agree with you.
But hang on, there's got to be some sense of understanding how to use the tool.
Sure.
Right? Like, you for now, but just in any way, shape, like if you buy Photoshop today and you've never used it before, you're gonna need some sense of an understanding of how to utilize the tool.
Hold on a second though, but that's no joke. Copilot and there's other software tools that do this already, that will look at the code and instantly tell you, just press it. What do you want to do? Press. I'll do it for you.
I understand that, but over time, you don't need to put in those questions and those prompts anymore, right? You're learning it. You're understanding it. You're understanding how to make the tool more efficient, which is essentially what AI is designed to do. Just reduce the timeline for efficiency, whether it's writing a blog post every day by typing in a couple sentences and saying, hey, throw me 500 words so I could put it on my website. You review it, make a couple edits based around whatever's relevant. There's still many holes in the way that the technology is used to replace.
I don't think it matters, Mike. I think that most people listening to this podcast understand how a combustion engine car works, right?
I don't think they do. I think they put the key in the ignition and they go from point A to point B.
That's my point.
I don't think they understand how it works.
In the world, in my old world, I knew that like the gas gets mixed with the air and it creates combustion. Like in a Tesla, I don't have the foggiest idea what happens when you step on the accelerator, and I don't care. And most people are going to be that way.
Okay, that's fine. But again, in order, if you don't understand the fundamental pieces of how to use the Tesla, you're not going anywhere.
Well, if the Tesla works like so, how many people do you know can't fix their own sink if it clogs up? Call the plumber. Versus
who might have an NFT that you can get a benefit from.
That's why I
right?
have a husband.
Right. I mean, the guy or girl who's going to roll up their sleeves and get under there and take apart the thing just because they like to do that, they'll win. And the dude who doesn't understand how this thing works and calls the plumber is going to pay $400. He loses.
But I think
Spanner makes a good point in the Bolt Plus chat where he said it's just like when we all got computers, like those people that learned how to use the computer properly and used it for their, for their work or to improve their processes, etc. Like the better you know how to use the computer, the more you get out of it. You get all those people that just upload their pictures to Facebook, and then you get those people that are writing computer programs like Mike and, my husband every week. So, it's degrees, isn't it? And so it's going to be the same for this. I read a really interesting story. I can't remember where it was now in the last week or so about the circular nature currently of ChatGPT if it gets an error. And the fact that if those errors are then used in various places, the error is actually reinforced all the time within the algorithm, and which is what Mike's been banging on about, hasn't he, for, since November last year when this came out, like who wrote the original thing, or what are they looking at, and how is it, what fingers are there in the pie from, the hand in the puppet from behind the screen kind of thing. And so, one of the problems I see, I think, going forward is that, we've talked, haven't we, lots before, and people talk all the time about if there's mistakes on Google about you, or if there's something on the internet you want to get rid of, it's virtually impossible to find the traces of where it appears everywhere. So if you think about ChatGPT and those sorts of things now, if an error occurs and it's just perpetually used in various places over various things, I think it will be almost impossible to be able to correct mistakes like that.
There was a piece I'd come across on LinkedIn actually this week, and I can't remember who wrote it, but it made the point that in George Orwell's novel 1984, it discusses that 2 + 2 = 5. It's discussing the propaganda, and that ChatGPT scans that, and now it knows 2 + 2 is 5, and that's not exactly true, and yet it propagates that, and that's part of the reason
it isn't true.
It's not good at math. My point is, yes, but we're not going to change that, and I still think like the point remains that these AI tools are going to be used to build businesses for good or for ill, and it's just about mastery of the tool.
Well, no. It's about the understanding of the data that it collects from the user, right?
And whatever that data that it collects from the user is going to change in terms of these companies are going to defend and protect and firewall that you can't crawl their data.
That's not going to be possible in an open source platform. Right.
Well, I agree with you.
So think about the evolution of Google, right? We like to use them as our punching bag. So let's go at it.
When Amazon's busy, yes.
Google started out as just basically a what's known as a search parameter, right? A search function. It still is, but it also evolved to a predictive algorithm where it has the ability to reference a user's unique history and predict various outcomes that it might have, right? Facebook is notorious for this. This is how their algorithm has shifted. How many times do you scroll through something like Instagram? You were just talking to a buddy about like a new TV or something, and all of a sudden that TV pops up as a sponsor in the ad. Yeah. And while they may be listening, and while all those things may be true, may or may not, I don't know, the whole process is based around what they feel is going to be your next move as a consumer. Yeah. Right? What are you focused on? Is it football season coming up? Chances are that somebody like this might be looking for a better way to watch the game. There's a lot of these pieces in this code that are respective based around whatever the user has done in its history. And I think that the more we start feeding an engine like AI, or what we call AI in this ChatGPT, all it is it's just nothing more than an accelerated data collection tool.
But Mike, I'm going to use the example of DuckDuckGo. So long as you're not looking into Google for your information, it doesn't have your knowledge base, if you will, to try to sell you whatever crap they're selling you. So this leads down the road of competing AIs, right? And ironically, we'll get to Musk in a minute, but there's people in the world who don't like what OpenAI is doing and want a competitive thing to it. And you could argue that Google's Bard is different, but Microsoft is basically using OpenAI's infrastructure right now. So yeah, you're right.
And competition is good. Like, this is important, right? Because, again, it leads to further discussion. It leads to more various access to different pieces of information. It creates less bias based around advertisement and who's going to be able to get their information in front of the correct user.
The fragmentation problem will be real, whereas in the stock market world, wherever the stock is trading the most volume is where you want to trade it, even though it trades in multiple places. Or in the movie watching world, if it's on Netflix, but it's not on Disney Plus, you got to go get Netflix.
But we live in a world where user experience is everything, right? So, for example, let's predict what's going to happen with ChatGPT. I can say, how do you make a burger, right? And it will give me this recipe. It'll give me all these things. And then at the end, it'll say, hey, based around where you are, here are the top 3 places around you within 5 miles to get the best burger. And all those are advertisement places that this in real time can funnel out to me based around my direct search result. Right. So
yes or no? Yeah. In a Google world, that works. In a world,
it works in AI too.
In a world where I give it such tight parameters that it can only answer what I tell it to answer. Like you can,
but it never does. Think about it. Every single search result that you've actually asked it for, it gives you this explanation at the end that you didn't request. But now you can define it afterwards to say, take that off.
Tomorrow's Mike Neubauer says to the thing, and don't bother me with your bullcrap suggestions for your burger joints when you're done with this.
Correct. And what happens for the next 3 results? It does it, but then it reverts right back to where it was. Right. So then you have to redefine it.
This is going to become personalized LLMs, right? The large language models will be mine. This is Jarvis, Tony Stark. I don't really care that Mike's recommends his. Mine never will because I programmed it.
You've programmed it, but it will revert back. And when you correct it, it will apologize. Sorry, I didn't understand, or sorry, I made a mistake. But by the way, here's the ad that I'm shoving down your throat.
I'm spelling tinfoil. I'm going to move on to Elon unless you guys want to dig into this further. It's interesting. I just think that there's the AI evolution, which is really accelerating right now, is not going to stop. I worry about consolidation with companies like Microsoft and OpenAI working so closely together. Amazon's getting in the mix now. But I do think that it's going to continue to drive this digital media revolution we talk about all the time. Is basically you can now build things that you couldn't do before unless you were a company of 50. All right. Story number 3, we'll call it. This is the Twitter update. I can't even call it that anymore. X. Musk is thinking about removing X from Europe. For those who don't know, is an article out of Reuters. Musk may remove X from the EU in response to a new internet regulation, the Digital Services Act. Michelle, you can discuss this for us. Bans certain content, and it requires sharing of X's internal data with the regulators in Europe. And we're coupling that with X is launching 2 new subscription tiers. Basically, if you pay a little, they show you a few ads, and if you pay a lot, they show you no ads. So I forgot whose quote this is. It might be Naval, but advertising is a tax on the poor. If you pay money, you'll never see ads. So I'd love to get your thoughts around this. Michelle, we'll start with you because this is actually a European story, but what's your thoughts around Musk? I think I know the answer to that question and what's going on in the EU with X.
So unless it's changed recently, the UK are still generally tied to the EU regulations. So what they do, we kind of have to do here too. Until they start to get their act together. I don't know when that will be. I think there's 2 things going on here. One is Elon doesn't like to be told what he can and can't do. So he wouldn't like the regulation or the new controls that he would have to put on Twitter users in those X users in those countries, in European countries. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the types of information that they would need to collect or share or whatever. He no longer has any departments there that can provide that information because those workers were fired last year. And I think that it's
He'd be required to hire them though. If he had to put them in there, they'd have to rehire them. If it's compliance,
maybe, but he doesn't want to do that. That's the other thing I was going to say. Those people are not there. So at the moment, they don't have any departments that can. Very few people that can deal with it, and I think it's a bit ironic. The last sentence of that Reuters article is X did not immediately respond to Reuters' request for a comment. Well, no, because they don't have a marketing department or a public relations department anymore.
At least nothing.
So there's nobody there you might send the email to X to get comment, but there's nowhere that there's no one there to comment anymore. So I kind of feel it's a little bit. It's a little bit of he doesn't like to be told what he can and can't do in particular things. We know that. He wouldn't want the headache of having to comply with the regulations and all of that stuff. However, he would be making the platform way more insular than it is if he does this. Or if he doesn't do this, if you know what I mean. So if he doesn't comply with the regulations and do it, the whole of Europe is not going to be on Twitter anymore? Like, it's insane to even think
that. Sayonara. Who cares? You have all these other solutions in place, right?
Yes, but
not really.
From a business point of view, I know that he's a private company now, but he does still have investors. If you just suddenly said, we've gotten rid of 45 million of our users. See you later.
Of the world regions are gone.
Yeah. So what about all those businesses who are in Europe currently that advertise on Twitter? Well, they're gone. If there are any.
Figure out another solution.
Unless he's not.
I understand that, Mike. But from a point of view of being a business owner, to cut off a chunk of your audience like that is just another.
I'm going to draw the distinction.
That's building on rented land, right?
Oh yeah, I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying about the fact that as the owner of the business, not a great move from that point of view.
I want to draw the distinction between a business owner and an entrepreneur. He is not a business operator the way you're describing, Michelle. I agree with you, but he's an entrepreneur in that move fast and break stuff. Mike.
Well, the final part of that comment, right, which sets forth rules for preventing the spread of harmful content, banning or limiting certain user or targeted practices, and oh yeah, by the way, sharing some internal data with regulators and associated researchers. I think that final part is the thing that really broke the camel's back. He doesn't want to share the information. He doesn't want to share the data. And if that means getting off of a continent in order to stand up for that, I'm all for it. Because we complain about all of these platforms and the data sharing and the mining and the reselling and everything. And while I think it's still a very viable business, especially with social media, which is a public diary that people just spew out different bits of content that marketers used to pay billions of dollars for free. Now this has the ability to get collected in one lump sum and then resold to different business aspects. If that's a part of these regulatory efforts, the fact that he has to provide that data, I mean, I'm all for him saying no.
There's no question in my mind that he would pull this platform from Europe. He bought the platform, if you remember, back when it was Twitter. The reason he bought it was because he didn't want the free speech issue. He didn't want that being compromised, and the government had too much of a say-so in what Twitter was doing. So there's no way
in complete violation in this country of the First Amendment.
Agreed. My point is Elon and he talks about this on Rogan and other places, believes strongly enough in the free speech principles. He's going to sacrifice that business. And you can argue that he's an idiot and he's a bad business manager, and all that is true. But this is the guy is clearly.
And he'll figure out other ways to generate revenue, like you had mentioned, right, with the ads.
It relevant to the podcast, Mike. I think that Elon always was thinking of this as some sort of everything app or a banking platform or something he is not looking at the advertising models as we know them today. And platforms like Bolt Plus that operate off of a different principle, Elon is thinking that way. Like, where is media heading? Not, it won't work if I pull Europe because I don't have advertisers. I don't think he cares. He's looking on putting something together, and he doesn't know what it's going to be yet, and it's going to get messy along the way.
But even if that was the case, why would you not want the whole of Europe to use whatever it is that you're building next?
I don't think that he's against Europe. I think he's against with the regulations that are imposing him from operating under those terms and conditions, under that policy that he's putting forth as part of the company. And if he's going to get pushback from regulators and governments in an effort to stick to those morals, then just don't do business there.
So I want to pull the camera back and highlight a bigger issue, Mike. You mentioned this, and the First Amendment, freedom of speech, is a very American-centric thing. But on the global scale, we're starting to see the loss of control of the mass media messaging by governments. This is bigger than just America. For those who follow the news in Canada, if you're a podcaster like a Joe Rogan, the Canadian government wants you to register with the government for a license to podcast. Whereas right now, as you know, on the internet, you can just hop on and three idiots can run a thing called Business on the Block. So the government control of messaging is really the core issue.
One idiot.
And I think that Musk knows this and is encouraging this. And people, when they're given the option to go to a platform that's quote unquote more free speaking, whatever, and it will be filled with vitriol and hate and racism, and that is all true. But when they're given that option, they're going to go there because they know that the mass media is managed. And we talked last week, was it, about how the number of people going to media websites and news has declined precipitously in the last year. That's why.
Let's not forget about the impact that this has from the regulators themselves about not having access to the platform too. How much reliance do politicians and governments have in these social platforms in order to directly communicate rather than being on that 6 o'clock news, right? So it equally hurts them. So it's not like all the cards are on their hands and Musk has no bargaining chips here. They need him a lot more than he needs them.
But they can't.
I think he's going to. What?
You may be right, Mike. I agree with you, but they cannot admit that.
Of course they cannot, because they are people. They are not this entity, right? Like they're designed to make decisions on behalf of the people, right? And if those decisions are wrong, then they get theoretically voted out and kicked to the curb until the next person comes in to properly represent the people. Well, for now, the people that are there are trying to impose something that does not work in the best interest of what the people are. Right, giving away the data to the to the regulators and the powers that may be is not something he's willing to sacrifice for the company. Now, Spanner brings up, I think, the most important point here in the Bolt chat. You know, he's a master at keeping us talking about this shit. Right. Like, and frankly, you know, like that's really his end goal. So no matter how you look at it, the marketing play that he has about keeping this in the headlines is the master class of what we need to take away from this. Right. Whether all of these elements move on blockchain, whether there's tokenomics behind it, whether all of these things that we discuss on a week-to-week basis are somehow implemented in the social platform, either way, we are still talking about this.
I think that
very true. That's it. We're not talking about him anymore.
So the media lesson there, Mike, that I draw from your comment and very insightful is the key person of influence, as they say. Whoever your main face of your company is has to keep your company's name in the press, right? That's always been the case. Musk is masterful at this. We know that. Steve Jobs was great at it. There's a need to use these platforms to do that. This is almost a meta example. He's using his own platform to do that for his own company. And I think that there is a lesson to be learned in that. I agree with you. But I also think that this is going to lead to a blockchain solution, and not because of this show. I think that Musk he's dabbled in Dogecoin. He's dabbled in buying Teslas through crypto. This is a guy who's not against crazy business models. And blockchain is
an entrepreneur mindset, right? So how do you continuously create? You evolve and you build on something that already has a solid footing foundation, and you build off of that. And if that means saying leaving Europe in the rearview mirror while that construction takes place, so be it.
Sorry about that, Michelle. So I'm going to
use a VPN.
I'm going to take this opportunity.
Oh yeah, no. I don't care. You know, they say that any publicity is good publicity, don't they? So, you know.
Nothing in this conversation at any point in this show is meant to be investment advice, folks. This is a business conversation. The purpose of this Business on the Block podcast is to present new ways that you can use blockchain and tools like that in helping to build your company. It's the business end of how things are developing in the marketing space with a focus on the digital media revolution, meaning there's new platforms out there. There's new ones every day, and there's new uses of the existing platforms, as we're seeing with Elon. And there are ways now that you can create structures and tools, to coin Mike's term, to drive revenue in new ways. The companies are starting to get the feel of, oh, maybe we'll dabble in it. It was loyalty programs for a bit. Now we're starting to see some actual collusion with collaboration with the NFL and Taylor Swift. So there's examples now that companies can turn to and say, oh, there's a way to actually use NFTs other than just monkey faces to make a buck. And I think that that's an interesting, exciting thing. Final comments. We'll start with you, Michelle. Last thing, just parting thoughts on the themes you're seeing tonight.
So I think that we're at the beginning, certainly of the AI thing. I feel like there's going to be, just like there are, you know, the app that makes waffles that Mike talks about. I think that someone will come out with an AI tool that is a combination of all these other different ones. I saw a thing today about how a particular AI has been written to basically eliminate Excel spreadsheets. You can put in the information that you want and you ask it for a pie chart, a line diagram, a bar chart, of this or that, whatever, right? You know, so if you get like a Microsoft Office suite, but of AI things, for example, you know, I think that there'll be an AI app that makes waffles in the not too distant future.
So that's exactly what Microsoft is doing, right? They're trying to come out with Copilot it's better to put yourself out of business than to have someone else do it for you.
Yeah. And I think too that, and we've mentioned it before, NFTs will not be called NFTs going forward, but what they do and how they're connected and how they connect the physical and the digital world and the customer loyalty world will evolve, and we'll all be having them in our phones in, I don't know, within 2 years.
To that point, they're called digital collectibles in many circles, but they're not necessarily just for collecting.
No.
Mike, final thoughts on the themes you're seeing tonight?
Well, the blockchain component and continuously building on it is something that I feel like I preach every week here. The technology isn't going anywhere, and wherever the global economics are and the economy is, I mean, once things start getting back on track and that there's disposable income, people will start resurfacing, and you will see a trend and sort of a bounce back in the way that this particular industry evolves. And I feel that those who are building now and who are consistent now are going to be riding the top of that wave the next time the iron is hot again. But with respect to AI, I mean, look, there's so many different use cases and little cool tools that are emerging, all built around that open AI source. And the Sauce Plus, for example, they do a tremendous job in finding out those new tools on a week-to-week basis and figuring out different ways to use that. And I've learned a ton just by being a part of that community and understanding where that's going. But I think that from that perspective, they use a lot of these applications, and they use it in one way and then discuss different ways on how it can evolve based around the industry that you're in, right? So it brings us back to that same discussion we had about NFTs. Well, how can an NFT work for a gym? How can it work for Starbucks? Well, Starbucks called it something different, and they just basically built it out as a marketing campaign to their already cult-like following. Similar things, I think, are going to happen with other brands. And again, I feel that the onboarding process is much easier when bigger brands start putting effort and money behind some of these campaigns. And when they start merging their Web 2 construct into this Web 3 or blockchain world.
So my big takeaways right now for anyone running a business, it is time to start thinking about, number one, similar audiences that could cross-reference with what you are doing. I don't care your industry. And how can you tap into that via blockchain, right? NFTs allow for collaboration. And similarly, completely unrelated audiences that you might want to involve into your ecosystem in a creative way, which frankly is a lot more fun for both. So I think that we're going to see that. I'm going to again highlight the Taylor Swift NFL example. And blockchain enables things that just were not possible previous. So that's my closing thoughts. I want to thank everyone for listening, the listeners, the questions, the comments. We're really appreciative of all the support. We come to you live every week on LinkedIn, YouTube, and streaming live into 8 million homes, Bolt Plus. We enjoy the interactions with everyone, so feel free. We are back next week at 4 o'clock. For those who care, please give us a follow on LinkedIn. It's Business on the Block. And again, we'll be back at 4 p.m. Eastern Time next Wednesday. Thanks a lot, everybody. See you soon.